The gunshot that echoed across the valley that morning in June of 1877 was not meant as a warning, but Isaac Sullivan fired it anyway, watching a lone rider approach his property from the East Ridge, where the sun was just beginning to burn off the morning mist. He had built his ranch here in the Idaho Territory, 20 miles south of Idaho City, specifically because no one else wanted land this remote, this unforgiving. The winters were brutal, the summers scorching, and the nearest neighbor was a 3-hour ride away. That was exactly how Isaac liked it. After 4 years of war and 2 more trying to find his place in a world that had moved on without him, he had finally found peace in the silence of these mountains and valleys. He was 28 years old, and he had already lived enough for 2 lifetimes. The rider kept coming, seemingly undeterred by the warning shot. Isaac lowered his rifle slightly, squinting into the early light. As the figure drew closer, he realized with a start that it was a woman. She sat tall in the saddle, her dark hair pulled back beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and she rode with the easy confidence of someone who had spent more time on horseback than on foot. Her dress was practical, the kind meant for traveling, and she led a pack horse behind her laden with supplies. Isaac stepped off his porch, rifle still in hand but pointed at the ground. His dog, a loyal mutt named Copper, stood beside him, ears perked but tail wagging slightly. Even the dog seemed confused by this unexpected visitor. The woman reined in her horse about 20 feet from where Isaac stood. She was young, perhaps 23 or 24, with dark eyes that assessed him just as carefully as he was assessing her. There was no fear in her expression, which surprised him. Most women would have turned tail and run after a warning shot. "I am looking for work," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I can cook, mend, and I know my way around cattle and horses. I do not need much, just a place to stay and fair wages." Isaac stared at her for a long moment. "You are on the wrong property then. I do not need help. Your fences are falling down in at least 3 places I passed. Your barn needs repairs. And unless I am mistaken, you have about 200 head of cattle that will need to be moved to higher pasture within the next few weeks as the lower grass dries out. One man cannot do all that alone. I have been managing just fine. Managing is not the same as thriving." She dismounted in one fluid motion, landing lightly on her feet. "My name is Katherine Bailey. I have been working ranches since I was old enough to sit a horse. My father owned a spread down in Nevada until he died last year. I know this work." "Miss Bailey," Isaac said, keeping his tone firm, "I appreciate you riding all this way, but I am not interested in hiring anyone. I prefer to work alone." "Why?" The directness of the question caught him off guard. "That is my business. And this ranch is your business, which means letting it fall apart because you are too stubborn to accept help is also your business. But it seems like a waste." She looked around at the property, and Isaac tried to see it through her eyes. The cabin was solid, built with his own hands from timber he had cut and hauled himself. The barn was older, had been here when he bought the land, and yes, it needed work. The corrals were functional but could use reinforcement. The fences, as she had pointed out, were in rough shape in places. "What are you running from?" Isaac asked suddenly. Katherine met his gaze without flinching. "The same thing you are, I imagine. A past that will not leave me alone. The difference is, I am willing to work through it instead of hiding from it. I am not hiding." "Then what do you call this?" She gestured at the vast emptiness around them. "You are so far from civilization that you probably go weeks without seeing another soul. That sounds like hiding to me." Isaac felt anger rise in his chest, hot and familiar. "You do not know anything about me. You are right. And you do not know anything about me, but I can tell you this. I have nowhere else to go." I sold my father's ranch to pay his debts, and I have been riding for 3 weeks looking for honest work. Every ranch I have stopped at either tried to cheat me, proposition me, or both. You are the first man who has looked me in the eye like I am a person instead of property. So I am asking you, please, just a trial period. 1 month. If you are not satisfied with my work, I will move on, but at least give me a chance. There was something in her voice during that last part, a slight crack in her armor that made Isaac hesitate. He had meant what he said about preferring solitude. After everything he had seen and done during the war, after losing his entire family to fever in the years that followed, he had convinced himself that isolation was safer. Loneliness could not hurt you the way people could. But looking at Katherine Bailey, standing straight and proud despite the desperation he could now see lurking behind her eyes, he felt something he had not felt in years. Compassion. 1 month, he heard himself say. You can stay in the small cabin out back. It is not much, but it is dry and has a stove. Pay is $30 a month plus room and board. You work dawn until dusk, 6 days a week. Sunday is yours to do as you please, and we stay out of each other's way otherwise. I do not need a friend or conversation, I need a hired hand. Are we clear? Something flickered across Katherine's face, too quick for him to identify. Crystal clear, Mr. Sullivan. How did you know my name? It is on your mailbox at the end of the drive, or what is left of your mailbox anyway. Looks like someone used it for target practice. Despite himself, Isaac felt the corner of his mouth twitch. That was me. I got tired of riding down there to check it. Who are you expecting letters from? No one. That is the point. Katherine shook her head, but he thought he saw the hint of a smile. Where should I put my things? Isaac showed her to the small cabin, which had originally been a hunting shelter before he had fixed it up enough to be habitable. It was a single room with a cot, a small table, a chair, and a potbelly stove. Katherine surveyed it without comment, then began unloading her belongings from the pack-horse. Barn is over there, Isaac said, pointing. There is grain in the bins and fresh water in the trough. I will expect you ready to work by sunrise tomorrow. What about today? You just rode in. Get settled. I would rather work, idle hands and all that. Isaac studied her for a moment. The far pasture fence needs mending. Take the wagon, the tools are in the barn, and there is wire stacked near the south wall. Follow the fence line east about a mile and you will find the breaks. Katherine nodded and immediately set about her task, with an efficiency that told Isaac she had not been exaggerating her experience. She handled the horses with practiced ease, loaded the wagon quickly, and had it rolling across the property within 20 minutes of his instructions. Isaac watched her go, Copper sitting beside him. This is a mistake, he told the dog. Having someone else here is going to complicate everything. Copper just wagged his tail. Over the next week, Isaac tried to maintain his usual routine, but Katherine's presence made that impossible. She was up before dawn every day, and she worked with a relentless determination that both impressed and unsettled him. She repaired the fences, mucked out the barn, organized the tool shed, and even started preparing meals for both of them, despite his insistence that she only needed to worry about feeding herself. I am cooking anyway, she said when he tried to protest. It makes no sense to cook separately when we are both here. The meals were simple but good, far better than the basic fare Isaac had been preparing for himself. Katherine had a way with biscuits that reminded him painfully of his mother, and her stew was rich and hearty. They ate in silence mostly, at opposite ends of the table in his cabin, and then she would clean up and disappear back to her own quarters. True to her word, she stayed out of his way otherwise, but her presence was impossible to ignore. The ranch was coming back to life in ways Isaac had not realized it had been dying. Repairs he had been putting off for months were getting done. The animals were healthier and better cared for. Even the cabin looked tidier, though he had not asked her to clean it. On Sunday, Katherine stayed in her cabin most of the day. Isaac found himself wondering what she did in there, then annoyed with himself for wondering. He had told her they would stay out of each other's business, and he needed to respect that boundary himself. But on the second Sunday, he saw her sitting outside her cabin in the late afternoon, writing in a journal. There was something melancholy about the way she sat, her shoulders curved inward, her head bent low over the page. Without thinking, Isaac found himself walking over. "Everything all right?" he asked. Katherine looked up, clearly surprised to see him. "Fine, just writing letters." "No, just thoughts. I find it helps to get them out of my head sometimes." Isaac nodded, feeling awkward. He was about to leave when Katherine spoke again. "Your ranch is beautiful. My father would have loved it here. He always talked about moving further north, somewhere with mountains and real seasons. Nevada was too flat, too brown. He wanted green. There is plenty of green here in the spring and summer, less so in winter. I suppose nowhere is perfect." Katherine closed her journal. "Thank you for giving me this chance, Mr. Sullivan. I know you did not want to. You have earned your place. You are a good worker. But you still wish I would leave." Isaac did not know how to answer that because he did not know if it was true anymore. Yes, her presence had disrupted his carefully constructed solitude. But he found himself listening for the sound of her moving around in the mornings, noticed when she sang quietly to herself while working, looked forward to the meals they shared even if they did not speak much during them. "I am getting used to it," he said finally. Katherine smiled, and it transformed her face. Isaac realized she had not really smiled before, not like this. "That is progress, I suppose." The next week brought trouble in the form of a lightning storm that spooked half the herd. Isaac and Katherine spent 2 full days tracking down strays in the rougher terrain to the north. It was hard, exhausting work, made worse by the unseasonably hot weather. They rode side by side for hours, communicating mostly through gestures and short commands, working together with an efficiency that surprised Isaac. On the second evening, they made camp near a stream rather than try to ride back in the dark. Isaac built a fire while Katherine tended the horses, and then prepared a simple meal from the supplies they had brought. The sun set in brilliant shades of orange and pink, painting the mountains in light that seemed almost unreal. "My father used to say that sunsets like this were God's way of apologizing for the hardships of the day," Katherine said softly, staring into the flames. "What did your father die of?" Isaac asked, then immediately regretted the question. "I am sorry, that is not my business." "It is fine." "He had a stroke, went to bed one night and never woke up. The doctor said it was quick, that he would not have suffered. I am not sure if that makes it better or worse. I am sorry for your loss. And I am sorry for yours." Isaac looked at her sharply. "What makes you think I have lost anyone?" "Because people do not come out here to the edge of everything unless they are running from something or trying to forget something. And you do not strike me as a coward, so it must be the latter. You are very presumptuous, Miss Bailey. And you are very transparent, Mr. Sullivan." But she said it gently, without judgment. Isaac poked at the fire with a stick, watching sparks rise into the darkening sky. "I lost my whole family. Parents and 2 sisters to fever in 1873. Before that, I lost friends in the war, too many to count. The war has been over for 12 years. That is a long time to carry grief." "It does not feel long." "No," Katherine agreed quietly. "It never does." They sat in silence for a while, and Isaac found it was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of quiet that existed between people who understood each other's pain without needing to explain it. "Why did you really give me this job?" Katherine asked eventually. You could have sent me away. Part of you wanted to. Isaac considered the question. Because you looked at me like I was human. Not a hero, not a monster, just a person. I have not had anyone look at me like that in a long time. What do other people see? A war veteran who could not adjust to peacetime. A hermit. Someone to be pitied or feared, depending on their disposition. I see someone who is trying very hard to convince himself he does not need anyone, Katherine said. But I also see someone who saved a stray dog, who built a beautiful ranch with his own hands, who gave a desperate woman a chance when he could have turned her away. That is not the behavior of someone who has given up on humanity entirely. Maybe I am just practical. I did need the help, as you pointed out. Maybe, or maybe you are not as comfortable with solitude as you think you are. Isaac did not respond to that because he was afraid she might be right. That night, sleeping on opposite sides of the fire, Isaac woke once to the sound of Katherine crying quietly. He lay still, pretending to be asleep, giving her the privacy he suspected she needed. But something ached in his chest, a feeling he had thought he had successfully buried years ago. The desire to comfort someone, to ease their pain. In the morning, neither of them mentioned it. They gathered the remaining strays and made their way back to the ranch, arriving just before sunset. As Katherine dismounted and began caring for her horse, Isaac realized he had enjoyed the last 2 days more than he had enjoyed anything in recent memory. The work had been hard, yes, but there had been a companionship to it that he had not known he was missing. The admission terrified him. But over the following weeks, Isaac found himself seeking out Katherine's company more often. Small things at first, asking her opinion on which fields to rotate the cattle to, helping her with repairs that did not strictly require 2 people, lingering over meals, letting conversations stretch a few minutes longer each time. Katherine seemed to sense his gradual thaw and responded in kind. She began to share stories about her life before, about growing up on the ranch in Nevada, about her father who had taught her everything he knew about ranching and horses and surviving in unforgiving land. She told him about her mother, who had died when Katherine was 10, and how she had essentially run the household from that young age. "I never really got to be a child," she said one evening as they sat on his porch, watching the last light fade from the sky. "There was always work to be done, and my father was so busy with the ranch. Not that I resent it. It made me who I am. But sometimes I wonder what it would have been like to have had time to just play, to be foolish and carefree." "We had to grow up fast too," Isaac said. "The war saw to that. I enlisted when I was 17, thought it would be a great adventure. I was still young enough to believe war had glory in it. And then you learn different. Yes, war is mostly boredom punctuated by moments of absolute terror. And when it is over, you are left with memories you cannot shake and skills that have no use in peacetime. That is not true. You built this place. You are making a life. I am surviving. There is a difference." Katherine turned to look at him, and in the dim light her eyes were very dark and very serious. "Is there? Isaac, you have a home here. You have land, animals, a purpose. Maybe it is not the life you imagined, but it is still a life worth living." It was the first time she had used his given name, and something about hearing it in her voice made his heart stutter in his chest. "Maybe," he said softly. As July turned into August, the work intensified. They moved the herd to higher pastures, branded the spring calves, and began preparing for the inevitable winter even though it was months away. Isaac had never worked so hard, but he had also never felt so alive. He caught himself watching Katherine when she was not looking. The way she moved with such grace and efficiency. The way she laughed when Copper did something foolish. The way her face lit up when she talked about horses, which were clearly her passion. She was beautiful, he realized, though in a way that had nothing to do with conventional prettiness and everything to do with strength and authenticity. The realization that he was falling for her came gradually, then all at once. It happened on a Wednesday in mid-August. They had been working in the barn, organizing the tack room, when a snake spooked Catherine's horse. The mare reared, and Katherine, who had been adjusting the saddle, was thrown hard against the stall door. Isaac was beside her in an instant, his heart pounding with fear. "Are you all right?" He helped her sit up, his hands gentle but urgent as he checked for injuries. "I am fine," Katherine said, but she was shaken. "Just had the wind knocked out of me. You could have been seriously hurt." His voice came out harsher than he intended, born from the spike of terror he had felt watching her fall. "But I was not. Isaac, I am fine." He became aware suddenly that he was still holding her, one hand on her shoulder, the other on her arm. She was looking up at him with those dark eyes, and he saw the exact moment when her expression changed, when she realized what he was only now admitting to himself. "Isaac," she whispered. He should have pulled away. Should have put distance between them. Should have remembered all the reasons he had chosen solitude in the first place. But he did not. Instead, he reached up and gently touched her cheek, his thumb brushing across the freckles that dusted her skin. "I think," he said slowly, "that I have been lying to myself." "About what?" "About wanting to be alone, about preferring solitude, about not needing anyone." He took a breath. "About you." Catherine's eyes widened slightly. "Isaac, you do not have to say anything. I know I hired you to work, and I have no right to complicate things. But I needed you to know. These past 2 months, you have brought something back to life in me that I thought was dead, and I am terrified of it, honestly. But I am more terrified of losing it now that I know what it feels like." For a long moment, Katherine just stared at him. Then she reached up and covered his hand with hers, pressing it more firmly against her cheek. "I came here running from my grief," she said quietly. "From the weight of being alone after losing the only family I had. I told myself I just needed work, just needed purpose. But the truth is, I was looking for a reason to keep going, and I found it here. I found it in this ranch, in the work, in the way you treated me with respect when no one else would. But mostly, I found it in you." "Katherine," he breathed her name like a prayer. "I am terrified too," she continued. "Of getting hurt, of losing someone else I care about, of letting myself hope for something more than just survival. But maybe being terrified together is better than being safe and alone." Isaac could not have said who moved first. Maybe they both did. But suddenly he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and it felt like coming home after the longest, hardest journey imaginable. Her lips were soft, and she tasted like the peppermint tea she favored in the evenings. Her hands came up to grip his shirt, holding him close, and he wrapped his arms around her like he could protect her from every hard thing the world might throw their way. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything," he said. "I know. I am not an easy man. I have demons I am still fighting. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I am back in the war, seeing things that are not there. And I am stubborn and opinionated, and I talk to horses like they can understand me, and sometimes I burn dinner when I get distracted." Despite everything, Isaac laughed. It felt rusty and strange, like using muscles he had forgotten he had. "I think I can live with burnt dinner. And I think I can handle your demons, if you will let me. That might be the scariest part of all this, letting someone see the worst parts of me." Katherine pulled back just enough to look him in the eye. "Isaac Sullivan, I have been living on your property for 2 months. I have seen you angry and frustrated and exhausted. I have heard you curse at broken equipment and seen you be short-tempered when things go wrong. I know you are not perfect, and I am falling for you anyway." Something in Isaac's chest loosened. A knot he had been carrying for so long he had forgotten it was there. "Stay," he said. "Not as a hired hand. Stay with me. Be with me. Help me turn this place into something real, something more than just a refuge. Help me remember how to be human again." "I thought you would never ask," Katherine said, and then she was kissing him again. They took things slowly after that, courting properly despite living on the same property. Isaac would ride over to Katherine's cabin in the evenings, and they would sit outside and talk for hours. He learned that she loved reading, that she had a collection of books in her cabin that would rival any library. She learned that he could play the harmonica, though he had not touched his in years, and she convinced him to dig it out and play for her. They worked side by side during the days, but now there was a new awareness between them, an intimacy that went beyond the physical. Isaac found himself sharing things he had never told anyone, about the nightmares that still plagued him, about the guilt he carried for surviving when so many others had not, about his fear that he was fundamentally broken, incapable of being the kind of man who deserved happiness. Katherine listened without judgment, and then she shared her own fears. About feeling responsible for her father's death, convinced that if she had been there, had checked on him during the night, she might have been able to save him. About the ranch hands who had tried to take advantage of her after he died, assuming that a woman alone was fair game. About the terror she had felt riding alone for weeks, not knowing if she would find safety or something far worse. "We are both carrying more than we should," Isaac said one night as they sat on his porch, Katherine leaning against his shoulder. "But maybe that is why we understand each other. Maybe we needed to find someone who knows what it is like to be broken." "I do not think we are broken," Katherine said thoughtfully. "I think we are scarred. There is a difference. Broken things cannot function, but scars are proof that we survived something difficult and came out the other side. They are evidence of strength, not weakness." Isaac turned that over in his mind, liking the way it reframed things. "When did you get so wise?" "I have had a lot of time to think, and my father used to say that surviving hardship either makes you bitter or better. I decided a long time ago that I wanted to be better. I think I chose bitter for a while there. But you are choosing different now. That takes courage." In September, they rode into Idaho City together to get supplies. It was Katherine's first time seeing the town, and Isaac watched her take it all in with fascination. Idaho City had been a booming gold rush town in the 1860s, and while it had calmed down significantly since then, it still had the rough energy of a mining community. The main street was lined with establishments of varying respectability, and the population was a mix of miners, ranchers, merchants, and drifters. At the general store, the owner, a heavy-set man named Martin Hughes, looked between Isaac and Katherine with barely concealed curiosity. "Did not know you had a wife, Sullivan," he said as he tallied up their order. "I do not," Isaac said. "This is Miss Bailey. She is helping me run the ranch." "That's so." Martin's tone suggested he did not believe that was all there was to it. "Well, Miss Bailey, welcome to Idaho City. Always nice to see new faces, especially pretty ones." Katherine smiled politely but did not engage with the flirtation. Isaac felt a surge of possessiveness that surprised him. He wanted to tell Martin that Katherine was his, but they had not discussed what they were to each other in terms the outside world would understand. As if sensing his thoughts, Katherine reached over and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. Hughes. Isaac has told me what a fine establishment you run." The use of his first name, the casual intimacy of the gesture, made their relationship clear without needing to be spelled out. Martin's eyes widened slightly, but he nodded and finished their transaction without further comment. Outside, Isaac squeezed Catherine's hand. "That will be all over town by sunset. Good. Let people know that I am taken. Maybe it will keep the Martin Hughes of the world from getting ideas." "Are you taken?" Isaac asked, stopping in the middle of the street and pulling her around to face him. "We have never really discussed what this is between us." "What do you want it to be?" Isaac looked at her, this strong, beautiful, complicated woman who had ridden into his life and changed everything. "I want you to be mine, completely. I want to marry you, Katherine. I know it is fast, and I know we are still figuring things out, but I am certain about this. I am certain about you." Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Yes. Yes, Isaac, I will marry you. I will be yours, and you will be mine, and we will figure the rest of it out together." He kissed her right there in the middle of the street, not caring who saw. When they broke apart, there were a few townspeople staring, but Isaac did not care about that either. For the first time in years, he felt like he had a future worth looking forward to. They were married 3 weeks later by a circuit preacher who passed through the territory. The ceremony was simple, held at the ranch with only copper as a witness and the mountains as their cathedral. Katherine wore a simple dress she had made herself, and Isaac wore his best shirt and vest. They spoke their vows with the sun setting behind them, painting the world in golds and pinks. "I promise to stand by you in all things," Isaac said, his voice rough with emotion. "To be your partner, your support, and your love. I promise to let you in, even when my instinct is to shut the world out. And I promise to build a life with you that is worth all the hardship we have both endured to get here." Catherine's voice was steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "I promise to be your home and your haven. To challenge you when you need it and comfort you when you need that instead. I promise to never stop choosing you every day for the rest of our lives. And I promise that no matter what comes, we will face it together." When the preacher pronounced them married, Isaac pulled Katherine into his arms and kissed her with all the love and hope and gratitude that was overflowing from his heart. This woman had saved him in ways she probably did not even realize, had taken a man who was slowly dying from loneliness and brought him back to life. That night, Katherine moved her belongings into the main cabin, and they consummated their marriage with a tenderness and passion that left them both shaken. Afterwards, lying tangled together in Isaac's bed, Katherine traced the scars on his chest, some from the war, others from the hard life of ranching. "Tell me about this one," she said, touching a particularly nasty mark near his ribs. "Shrapnel from an artillery shell. I was lucky. The man standing next to me was not. And this one," she traced a line across his shoulder, "barbed wire fence that collapsed while I was repairing it. My own fault for not paying attention." Katherine pressed a kiss to each scar, and Isaac felt something break open inside him, some last remaining wall he had been holding in place. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, and let himself feel all of it. The grief he had been carrying. The love he was so afraid of losing. The hope that maybe, just maybe, the future could be different from the past. "I love you," he whispered into the darkness. "I did not think I would ever say that to anyone again. Did not think I had it in me, but I love you, Katherine, more than I can put into words." "I love you too," she whispered back. "And I am not going anywhere. You are stuck with me now, Isaac Sullivan." "That sounds perfect to me." The first months of marriage were an adjustment, not a bad one, but an adjustment nonetheless. They had to learn each other's rhythms, had to figure out how to share space and decisions and a life. There were disagreements, of course. Katherine thought Isaac was too cautious with money, always hoarding it for imagined disasters instead of investing in improvements. Isaac thought Katherine took too many risks, pushing herself too hard and not taking enough breaks. But they learned to compromise, to listen to each other, to remember that they were on the same side even when they disagreed on the details. And the making up after fights was always sweet, ending in laughter and kisses and recommitment to each other. As autumn deepened into winter, they prepared the ranch for the harsh months ahead. The herd was moved to the winter pastures closest to the barn. Firewood was cut and stacked. The roof was repaired and reinforced. Katherine spent long hours preserving food, canning vegetables and fruit they had grown in the small garden she had started that summer. Isaac salted meat and stored grain. The first snow came in early November, and with it, a sense of isolation that was both peaceful and slightly suffocating. They were truly cut off from the outside world now, just the two of them and the animals and the endless white landscape. But Isaac found that with Katherine by his side, the isolation did not feel oppressive. It felt cozy, intimate, like they were the only two people in the world. They spent the long winter evenings reading aloud to each other, playing cards, talking. Isaac taught Katherine how to play the harmonica, though she was terrible at it, and they both ended up laughing more than making music. Katherine taught Isaac how to knit, and he surprised himself by actually enjoying the repetitive, meditative nature of it. On the coldest nights, they would lie in bed and dream about the future, about the improvements they would make to the ranch come spring, about maybe starting a family, though Katherine admitted she was nervous about that. "What if I am not a good mother?" she asked one night, curled up against Isaac's side. "I never really had a mother to learn from. What if I do everything wrong?" "You will not," Isaac said with certainty. "You have the biggest heart of anyone I have ever met. Any child of ours will be lucky to have you as a mother. And you will be a wonderful father. I have seen how gentle you are with the animals, how patient. You will bring those same qualities to parenting." "I hope so. I hope I can give our children the kind of childhood I had before the war, safe, happy, full of love." "We will," Katherine said firmly. "Together, we will give them everything." Spring came slowly, the snow reluctant to release its hold on the land. But eventually the ice melted, the streams swelled with runoff, and the first green shoots began to appear. Isaac and Katherine emerged from their winter cocoon renewed and ready to tackle the new season. They expanded the garden, adding more space for vegetables and even some berry bushes. They repaired and improved the irrigation system, making sure their water supply would be reliable through the dry summer months. They branded the new calves, and Isaac taught Katherine how to do it properly, impressed by how quickly she picked up the skill. In May, Katherine started feeling unwell in the mornings. At first, they both assumed it was something she ate, but when it continued for a week, the truth became undeniable. "I think I am with child," she said one morning, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. Isaac felt his heart skip a beat. "Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor. All the signs are there." He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "A baby. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Katherine asked, and he could hear the nervousness in her voice. "Happy, Katherine. I am terrified and elated and more in love with you than I ever thought possible. Yes, I am happy." They rode into Idaho City the following week to see the doctor, who confirmed what they already knew. Katherine was about 2 months along, which meant the baby would arrive sometime in late autumn or early winter. The doctor, an older man named Thomas Webb, gave them advice on what to expect and told Katherine to take it easy, especially during the hot summer months. "Easy," Katherine said with a laugh as they rode back to the ranch. "As if there is anything easy about running a ranch. You heard the doctor. You need to rest more." "I will rest when the work is done." "Katherine." "Isaac." She mimicked his serious tone, then softened. I know my limits. I will not do anything to endanger our child, but I also will not spend the next 7 months sitting around doing nothing. I will go mad." They compromised as they always did. Katherine continued to work, but she focused on the lighter tasks and took breaks when she needed them. Isaac picked up the heavier jobs, often working long into the evening to make sure everything got done. It was exhausting, but it was also satisfying in a way he had never experienced before. He was not just working to survive anymore. He was building something, creating a legacy to pass on to his child. As summer heated up and Katherine's belly began to swell, Isaac found himself marveling at the changes in her. She seemed to glow from within, and despite the discomfort of pregnancy and the heat, she remained cheerful and optimistic. She talked to the baby constantly, singing lullabies and telling stories, and Isaac would sometimes catch her with her hands on her stomach, a look of wonder on her face. In July, they were surprised by visitors. A family of travelers, the Andersons, came down the main road with a broken wagon wheel. Isaac and Katherine helped them repair it, and in gratitude, the family stayed for dinner. They had 3 children, ranging in age from 4 to 10, and watching Katherine interact with them, so natural and warm, Isaac knew without a doubt that she was going to be an amazing mother. After the Andersons left the next morning, Katherine was unusually quiet. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac asked. "Those children. How happy they seemed despite living on the road. It made me think about our child, about the life we are going to give them. We are going to give them a good life. A home, love, security. But will it be enough? This place is so isolated, Isaac. Our child will not have other children to play with, will not have friends nearby." "Is that what you want, to move closer to town?" Katherine shook her head slowly. "No, I love it here. I love what we have built. I just worry sometimes. Our child will have something those children do not have. 2 parents who love each other and who will move heaven and earth to give them every opportunity. We will figure out the rest as we go. You always know what to say. Not always, but I am learning." In September, as Katherine entered her final months of pregnancy, they received word that a harsh winter was predicted. Isaac went into overdrive, preparing the ranch for the worst. He repaired every inch of fence, reinforced the barn, stocked up on supplies beyond what they would normally need. He was not going to take any chances, not with Katherine and the baby depending on him. Katherine watched his frantic preparations with a mixture of amusement and affection. "You do know that people have been having babies through winters for thousands of years, right? Not my baby, not my wife. Your baby and your wife are tougher than you think. I know you are tough. That does not mean I am not going to do everything in my power to keep you safe." Katherine waddled over to him, her hand on her lower back, and kissed him softly. "I know, and I love you for it. But Isaac, you need to breathe. Everything is going to be fine." But in late October, as the first major storm of the season rolled in, Katherine went into labor 3 weeks earlier than expected. Isaac had gone into town for supplies, and when he returned, he found her in the cabin, gripping the edge of the table, her face pale with pain. "How long?" he asked, immediately going into crisis mode. "About 2 hours. The pains are getting closer together. I need to get you to town, to the doctor. There is no time for that, and you know it. Isaac, you are going to have to help me deliver this baby." Terror, pure and absolute, flooded through him. "I do not know how. Neither do I. But women have been doing this forever. We will figure it out." She gasped as another contraction hit, and Isaac supported her through it, feeling completely helpless. He helped her to the bed and tried to remember everything he had ever heard about childbirth, which was not much. He boiled water, gathered clean towels, and stayed by Katherine's side, holding her hand and trying to project a calm he did not feel. The labor was long and difficult. Katherine was strong, but Isaac could see her strength waning as the hours wore on. He wiped her forehead with cool cloths, gave her sips of water, and told her over and over that she could do this, that she was the strongest person he had ever known. "I cannot," she said at one point, tears streaming down her face. "Isaac, I cannot do this." "Yes, you can, Katherine, look at me." He waited until her exhausted eyes met his. "You can do this. I know you can. You are the woman who rode for 3 weeks alone looking for work. You are the woman who helps me run this entire ranch. You are the woman who took on a broken man and loved him back to life. If anyone can do this, it is you." Katherine gripped his hand so hard he thought she might break his fingers, but he did not complain. And then, as dawn was breaking, with one final push and a scream that Isaac would hear in his dreams, their child was born. For a moment, there was silence and Isaac's heart stopped. Then the baby let out a wail and he nearly collapsed with relief. "A boy," he said, his voice shaking as he wrapped the tiny, squirming infant in a clean towel. "Katherine, we have a son." Katherine was crying and laughing at the same time, reaching for the baby with trembling arms. Isaac placed him carefully on her chest and watched as his wife and son met for the first time. The baby quieted immediately, seeming to recognize his mother's heartbeat, and Katherine stroked his dark hair with one finger, her face transformed with love. "He is perfect," she whispered. "He is," Isaac agreed, sitting on the edge of the bed and putting his arm around his family. His family. The concept still felt surreal. They named him James Henry Sullivan after both of their fathers. Jamie, Katherine called him from the start, and the name stuck. He was a healthy baby, if a bit small from being early, with dark hair like his mother and eyes that would eventually turn the same blue-gray as Isaac's. Those first weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and constant worry. Isaac found himself checking on Jamie obsessively, making sure he was still breathing, still warm enough, still everything. Katherine was exhausted but radiant, nursing their son and singing to him in a voice worn rough from lack of sleep. "I have never been so tired or so happy in my entire life," she said one night as Isaac took Jamie from her so she could rest. Isaac looked down at his son, this tiny person who depended on them for everything, and felt his heart expand in a way he did not know was possible. "I know exactly what you mean." The winter that followed was indeed harsh, but inside their cabin, there was warmth and light and love. They settled into a routine as new parents, learning Jamie's cries and needs, marveling at his every tiny development. Isaac found that he was a natural with the baby, his large hands surprisingly gentle, and his deep voice able to soothe Jamie when nothing else could. As the months passed, and Jamie grew from infant to baby, Isaac and Katherine adapted their work on the ranch to accommodate their new reality. They took turns watching Jamie, and when both of them needed to work, they brought him with them, settling him in a basket in the barn or the shade of a tree while they worked nearby. In the spring, when Jamie was 6 months old, they had the cabin photographed by a traveling photographer who came through Idaho City. In the image, Isaac stands tall and serious behind Katherine, who sits holding Jamie, her hand on Isaac's arm. It was a formal pose, as was the style, but if you looked closely, you could see the love and contentment in all their faces. By the time Jamie was a year old, Katherine was pregnant again. This time, she knew what to expect, and the pregnancy was easier despite the challenges of caring for a toddler while carrying another child. Their daughter, Grace Elizabeth Sullivan, was born in early spring of 1880, her arrival much less dramatic than her brother's. Katherine's labor was shorter, and Isaac was more confident helping her through it, though no less scared. Grace was different from Jamie from the start. Where he had been a quiet, serious baby, she was all smiles and laughter. She had Catherine's dark eyes and Isaac's stubborn chin, and from the moment she could crawl, she was into everything. "She is going to be a handful," Katherine said fondly, watching Grace toddle after her brother, determined to keep up despite being much smaller. "She gets that from you," Isaac said. "Excuse me, the stubbornness, the determination, the refusal to let anything stop her," Katherine laughed. "I suppose that is fair." With 2 children, the ranch became a different place. There was always noise, always activity, always something happening. Isaac, who had once craved silence above all else, found that he loved the chaos. He loved hearing his children's laughter, loved watching them explore and grow, loved the family dinners where they all sat together and talked about their days. In the summer of 1882, when Jamie was 4 and Grace was 2, they hired a young man named Peter Hart to help with the heavier ranch work. Peter was 19, the son of a family that had recently settled near Idaho City, and he was eager to learn ranching. With his help, Isaac was able to spend more time with his family, teaching Jamie to ride and helping Katherine keep Grace out of trouble. They also expanded the ranch, buying adjacent land when it became available and growing their herd. What had started as Isaac's refuge had become a thriving operation, one that would provide for their children and, eventually, their children's children. On quiet evenings after the children were in bed, Isaac and Katherine would sit on the porch as they had in those early days, watching the sun set over the mountains. They were older now, marked by the hard work and the years, but the love between them had only deepened. "You ever miss it?" Katherine asked one such evening. "The solitude you had before I came." Isaac pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "Not even for a second. You gave me everything I did not know I needed, a partner, a family, a reason to keep going. I thought I wanted to be alone, but I was just afraid of being hurt again. You taught me that the risk of love is worth taking." "We taught each other," Katherine corrected. "I was just as lost as you were. We found our way together. And we will keep finding our way together, for as long as we both live." "That sounds perfect to me." As the years passed, the Sullivan Ranch became a fixture in the territory. They were known for quality cattle and horses, and for the integrity with which they did business. Jamie and Grace grew into capable young people, both inheriting their parents' work ethic and their deep love for the land. Jamie, serious and thoughtful like his father, took to ranching naturally. By the time he was 16, he was essentially running the day-to-day operations alongside Isaac. Grace, meanwhile, had her mother's way with horses and spent most of her time in the barn, training and breaking young stock. In 1890, when Jamie was 12 and Grace was 10, Katherine gave birth to their third and final child, a son they named William Isaac Sullivan, after no one in particular. They just liked the name. Billy, as he was quickly nicknamed, was a surprise and a blessing, and his arrival brought new energy to the household. By the time Billy was 5, in 1895, Isaac was 46 years old and Katherine was 43. They had been married for 18 years, and while life had not always been easy, it had been good. Rich with love and purpose and connection. One evening in early summer, as they watched their 3 children playing in the yard, Copper long since passed and replaced by a new dog named Scout, Katherine took Isaac's hand. "We did it," she said softly. "We built a life worth living." "We did," Isaac agreed. "Against all odds, we did." "Do you remember that day I rode onto your property? How angry you were," Isaac laughed. "I was not angry. I was terrified. Terrified that you would see through me, that you would disturb the fragile peace I had convinced myself was enough. And now." Now I cannot imagine my life without you in it, without any of this." He gestured at their children at the ranch, at everything they had built. "You saved me, Katherine, in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," she said, echoing words she had spoken years ago. "That is what love does. It saves us from ourselves, from our fear, from our isolation. It makes us brave enough to hope, to risk, to live fully instead of just surviving." Isaac pulled her into his arms, holding her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "I love you. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, always and forever." They stood there together as the sun set, casting long shadows across the land they had tamed together. Their children's laughter filled the air. Scout barked at something in the distance, and the mountains stood eternal in the background, bearing witness to a love that had transformed two broken souls into something whole. Isaac had thought he wanted solitude, had convinced himself that isolation was the only way to survive in a world that had taken so much from him. But Katherine had ridden onto his property and stayed, and in staying, she had shown him that there was another way, a better way. A way that involved partnership and family, and opening his heart to the possibility of joy even after experiencing profound pain. The ranch that had been a refuge became a home. The man who had been hiding became a husband and father. And the woman who had been running found a place to finally stand still. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Isaac and Katherine went inside to put their children to bed. Jamie was old enough to stay up a bit later, so Isaac sat with him on the porch, teaching him constellations and talking about the responsibilities of running a ranch. Grace had already fallen asleep, exhausted from a day of playing, and Katherine tucked her in with a kiss. Billy was in that twilight state between waking and sleeping, and Katherine sang him the lullaby her mother had sung to her, passing down comfort across generations. Later that night, lying in bed with Katherine curved against his side, Isaac reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The war that had nearly destroyed him, the losses that had made him want to give up, the choice to isolate himself in these mountains, and then the day that changed everything, when a woman with dark eyes and an iron will had ridden onto his property looking for work. He had given her a month, thinking she would leave and his life would return to normal. Instead, she had stayed, and in staying, she had given him a future he had not dared to dream of. "What are you thinking about?" Katherine murmured sleepily. "How lucky I am. How easily I could have sent you away that first day, how different everything would be if I had. But you did not. You took a chance. We both did. Best decision I ever made, mine too." They fell asleep tangled together, as they had every night for 18 years, and would for many more to come. The following years brought their own challenges and triumphs. There were harsh winters and dry summers, market fluctuations that affected cattle prices, and the general hardships that came with ranching in an unforgiving land. But through it all, Isaac and Katherine faced everything together, their partnership stronger with each passing year. Jamie eventually married a young woman from Idaho City named Sarah, and they built a house on the eastern portion of the property, starting their own family while still being part of the ranch operation. Grace, independent and spirited like her mother, waited until she was 25 to marry, choosing a horse trainer named Matthew who could match her passion for the animals. They settled on the western edge of the property. Billy, the baby of the family, showed an early aptitude for mechanics and engineering, and while he loved the ranch, he also had dreams of seeing more of the world. Isaac and Katherine supported this, knowing that their children needed to forge their own paths, even if those paths led away from home. By 1905, Isaac and Katherine were in their mid-50s, their hair streaked with gray, their hands weathered by decades of hard work. But they were healthy and content, surrounded by children and grandchildren, watching the legacy they had built continue into another generation. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party, inviting neighbors from miles around to celebrate. The gathering was held at the ranch, and as Isaac looked around at the full barn, at the people who had become their community, at the children and grandchildren running around underfoot, he was overwhelmed with gratitude. Katherine found him standing alone for a moment, taking it all in. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, slipping her hand into his. "I am thinking about that cowboy who lived alone in these mountains, convinced he did not need anyone. He seems like a stranger to me now." He was not a stranger. He was just a man who had not yet remembered how to hope. But he learned. We learned together. We did. And look at what we created. Not just this ranch, but this family, this life. It is more than I ever imagined possible. Katherine leaned her head on his shoulder. "We have been blessed, but we also worked for this, fought for this. Blessings and effort go hand in hand, I think. I love you, Katherine Sullivan, more today than the day I married you, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. And I love you, Isaac Sullivan. Thank you for letting me stay all those years ago. Thank you for taking a chance on a stubborn woman with nowhere else to go. Thank you for not giving up on a stubborn man who thought he wanted to be alone." They rejoined the party, dancing together as a friend played fiddle, laughing with their children, and watching the sun set over the land they had built their life on. The cowboy had thought he wanted solitude until she rode onto his property and stayed. And in staying, she had given him everything he had been too afraid to want. As the evening drew to a close and their guests began to leave, Isaac and Katherine stood together on their porch, arms around each other, looking out at the ranch that had been transformed from a refuge into a home, from a place of isolation into a place of love. No regrets. Katherine asked softly. "Not a single one," Isaac replied. "You. Only that I did not find you sooner. We found each other at exactly the right time. Any sooner and I would not have been ready to let you in. Any later and who knows if either of us would have had the courage to try. Fate works in mysterious ways. Or maybe it was not fate at all. Maybe it was just two people who were brave enough to take a chance, to be vulnerable, to believe that love was possible even after loss." Katherine turned to face him fully, her hands coming up to cup his weathered face. "Whatever it was, I am grateful for it. For you. For this life we have built. For every day I get to wake up beside you." Isaac kissed her, slow and sweet, a kiss that held 25 years of love and partnership and unwavering commitment. When they broke apart, both of them had tears in their eyes, but they were happy tears. "Come on," Katherine said, taking his hand. "Let us go inside. It has been a long day." They walked into their cabin, the same cabin where Isaac had lived alone for so long before Katherine arrived. But it was not the same at all. It was filled with memories now, with laughter and love and life. The walls had witnessed their arguments and their reconciliations, had heard their children's first cries and first words, had sheltered them through storms both literal and metaphorical. As they prepared for bed, moving around each other with the easy familiarity of decades spent together, Isaac caught Katherine's eye in the mirror and smiled. She smiled back, and in that moment, no words were needed. Everything that mattered was there in that smile, in the comfortable silence, in the knowledge that they would wake up together tomorrow and face whatever came with the same partnership and love they had shown for 25 years. They climbed into bed, and Katherine immediately curled into Isaac's side, her head on his chest, her hand over his heart. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, and they lay there in the darkness, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch settling in for the night. "Isaac," Katherine whispered. "Yes, love. Promise me something, anything. Promise me that no matter what happens, no matter how many years we have left, we will never take this for granted. This love, this life. Promise me we will always remember how lucky we are to have found each other." "I promise," Isaac said solemnly. "Katherine, even if I live to be 100, I will never forget the gift you gave me when you rode onto this property and refused to leave. You gave me back my life. You gave me hope and purpose and a reason to wake up every morning. I will never, ever take that for granted." "Good," Katherine said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "Because you are stuck with me, Isaac Sullivan, for better or worse, in sickness and health, until death do us part." "That sounds perfect to me," Isaac whispered, kissing the top of her head. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two souls who had found their way home through courage and love and sheer stubborn determination. Outside, the wind whispered through the mountains, carrying with it the promise of another tomorrow, another day to love and work and live fully. The cowboy who had thought he wanted solitude had learned that what he really wanted was connection, partnership, love. And the woman who had ridden onto his property looking for work had found not just employment, but a home, a husband, a life beyond anything she had imagined. Together, they had built something that would last long after they were gone, a legacy of love that would carry on through their children and their children's children. The Sullivan Ranch would stand for generations, a testament to what two people could create when they were brave enough to let down their walls and let love in. And as Isaac and Katherine slept peacefully in each other's arms, the mountains stood watch over them, eternal and unchanging, bearing witness to a love story that had transformed two broken souls into something whole, something beautiful, something that would endure through all the years to come. In the end, Isaac Sullivan got everything he had been afraid to want, and Katherine Bailey Sullivan found the home and family she had been searching for. And they lived out their days together on that ranch in the Idaho Territory, growing old side by side, their love deepening with each passing year until they became one of those legendary couples that people spoke of with reverence, the kind of love story that gave others hope that they too might find something so rare and precious. Their story was not one of grand gestures or dramatic rescues, though there had been elements of both. It was a story of daily choice, of waking up each morning and choosing each other, choosing love, choosing hope over fear and connection over isolation. It was a story of two people who had been broken by life finding healing in each other, who had been alone finding partnership, who had been lost finding home. And when they were very old, sitting on that same porch where they had shared so many sunsets, Isaac would sometimes look at Katherine and marvel at the journey they had taken together. From that first day when she had ridden onto his property, proud and desperate and determined, to this moment, decades later, surrounded by the evidence of a life well lived and a love well tended. "What are you looking at?" Katherine would ask, catching him staring. "Just remembering," Isaac would say. "Remembering and being grateful." "Me too," Katherine would reply, taking his hand. "Every single day." And that, in the end, was the secret to their enduring love, not perfection but gratitude, not the absence of hardship but the presence of partnership. Not a fairy tale, but a real, hard-won, beautiful life built on a foundation of mutual respect, unwavering commitment, and a love that had been tested by time and found to be true. The cowboy had thought he wanted solitude until she rode onto his property and stayed, and in staying, she had given him the greatest gift of all, a life worth living, a love worth fighting for, and a legacy that would endure long after they were both gone.